Moving on to Maestro. Did everyone see this? I watched it.
I watched it. I mean, George, you watched it ages ago, didn't you? At the New
Oh, did everyone see it before me? Yeah, fuck me, I guess.
Yeah, I saw it at the film festival in October.
Yeah, I saw it a month ago in theaters. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, get rocked. Cam.
Yeah, fuck. Get more followers, buddy. Get ready to learn Netflix.
I mean, we did pay to go for the festival.
Yeah, I paid for the festival. I was not invited to this.
I wasn't invited to this shit.
But Maestro released. So I guess I'll just keep talking. Maestro released this week on Netflix, but it did get a wider release or limited release in theaters. On the verge of securing a golden opportunity, American conductor Leonard Bernstein begins a tumultuous relationship with actress Felicia. Oh gosh, I don't know her last name. Upturning their lives. Montalegre. Thank you. Appreciate that. This guy can pronunciate. I appreciate
Guys
it.
Got it.
Carey Mulligan, Bradley Cooper, obviously directed by Bradley Cooper, produced by Todd Phillips, Martin Scorsese. A lot of people involved in this one. Netflix released. It's like Bradley Cooper's not magnum opus, but like it's his passion project. This is his big claim to fame. He wants the Oscar. He wants the Eagles to win the Super Bowl more, but on their 3-game losing streak, I think he's hoping for the Oscar at this point. So we'll see about that. 80% on Rotten Tomatoes, opening to mostly good reviews, but I think from what I've seen from a lot of film Twitter, it's not being received as well. People are saying like Bradley Cooper should be nominated for Rocket Raccoon rather than this, which that's just funny. My opinion on this movie is very well directed. I think Bradley Cooper is a good director. Carey Mulligan was a standout for me. I think she's absolutely fantastic. I really like her as an actress in general. Bradley Cooper was very good. Don't get me wrong. I think he actually, I would say he's great. I think he's good enough for a Oscar nomination. But I don't think he's better than Cillian Murphy. Probably, I haven't seen Killers of the Flower Moon. I got to assume Leo's probably better. I don't know. Maybe you guys agree or disagree.
Correct assumption.
I'm sure there are some other performances I'm not thinking right now. But yeah, I think he did a really good job, and I appreciate the technical aspect of this. I think it looks amazing. I think it's directed really well. The music's obviously very good. Like I said in my Letterboxd review, if it weren't very good, they probably wouldn't make a movie about him if he were just a very okay composer. But I think this movie's just extremely boring. And again, I said this in my review. This might be the most like MCU take of mine, but like I felt like a dull piece of work to get through and felt like a pain to get through. It felt 6 hours long. It's not a movie I would ever recommend to someone who watches like 15 movies a year. It's not a movie Emma, I think, would watch like 15 movies a year if she weren't married to me, but I probably forced her to watch much more. She doesn't even know if she hits 15 now. But I would never recommend this movie to her. Like, this is a 2.5 hour movie. That is,
I think it's on like 210. Honestly, it feels longer.
210. Yeah, no, it's just a bore to get through, in my opinion, and it doesn't have anything powerful enough. Like, I just watched Amadeus a little while ago. Like, that had some power behind it. It had some impact to get through, and it was also, on top of the music being amazing, it had some actual like heart and soul that made me care about it a lot more than this. But those are my general thoughts. You guys can give yours. We'll start with Tyler. I don't know how much you guys talked about this when you saw it, but just
I think we all saw it like separate times. So it's like we all touched on it one week after another for a couple weeks. But yeah, it's I don't have too much to say here. I think the direction is fantastic. If Bradley Cooper finally gets his first Oscar this year, I'd be much happier to be for direction as opposed to acting. I still like a lot of directors more than him this year, but I think between directing and acting, I think the direction is what definitely excels here between the two from Bradley Cooper. I just think it was really safe biopic, and that's a trap a lot of biopics can fall into, where it just ends up being a very paint by numbers highlights of their life. And I feel like we never really got the meat of Leonard Bernstein in this movie, especially because you get like flavors and hints of his relationships with some of his what's it called, like when you're like pupils, I guess. Like you get some hints of those, that he has some like relationships with some of his pupils while like kind of going behind the back of his wife, but it never like cuts into that enough to make it interesting or like a cutting, searing biopic, which makes sense seeing as, obviously the family is very involved with the making of this. So you're not going to go full on just paint him in a super negative light, but I just feel like it gave us hints of things that maybe we could get some teeth into this movie. We just never got it. Carey Mulligan's a standout by a mile though. She's clearly the best. And Bradley Cooper's like fine. Like it's a performance that he wouldn't be in my top 5 for the year for an actor nom. But if he gets nominated, like it's not like so egregiously bad where I'm like, oh, this is so stupid. Like it's fine or whatever it is. And it was a bore. I remember when this initially came out, like getting this festival releases, people were like, oh, the conducting scenes are so powerful and amazing. And yeah, they were cool, but I think maybe I was hyped up a little too much where I was like, that's really all it was. Like I saw some tweets of people being like, my theater stood up and cheered when the conducting scene hit its crescendo. I was like, it just didn't hit that for me whatsoever. But like I said, Mulligan is fantastic in this. Like Cam mentioned, it's being received well, but by film Twitter and more people in the critics sphere, they're a lot more lukewarm on it, like the 2.5 to 3 range. So it's probably going to hurt her chances. Carey Mulligan is great. I do think, of anything technical or acting wise, this movie, she's a shining light. But ultimately, there's just a lot here that seemed like they had an opportunity to make a really strong biopic that they just played it a little safe. I think he directed the hell out of it and really is, again, I don't know how much of my bias is being influenced by his Oscar campaign and how much we know about Bradley Cooper trying to really push for this Oscar. Maybe that's kind of giving me a negative light, making it feel like this movie was a little more cynical than maybe it actually was. But just because of what you know from him on outside the movie, maybe my influences on the movie itself make me view it as a little more negatively connotated than it otherwise would have. But it's a fine movie. I think it's a letdown from A Star Is Born. I think that was a lot more interesting, exciting, still very well directed, but Bradley Cooper's character as an acting performance, I thought had a lot more range in that as well. Ultimately disappointing, and a lot of people are super excited for like a biopic on Leonard Bernstein in the conducting sphere. He's as big a name as it can get. And I don't know if this really did him justice. And I know it was kind of between him and Jake Gyllenhaal in a bidding war for the rights of this. And simply, like, this is something Bradley Cooper's been working on for years. And Jake Gyllenhaal as well. Like, you might not think of it, just look at him on the surface, but this is something that was like a massive passion project that he really wanted to make happen too. But the family ended up going with Bradley Cooper. Not saying Jake Gyllenhaal would have done better or worse, but for someone who fought so hard to get the rights to this and has been spending years and years of his life, I mean, Star Is Born's been a long time ago now at this point. He's kind of been focused solely on this since, just in minor side roles in other movies. Like, you know, he's minorly in Dungeons and Dragons. He probably just goes to a recording booth a couple days for Guardians of the Galaxy. Most of his actual effort's been spent on this. And for this to be then the result, it was just disappointing. But yeah, Carey Mulligan was a weird casting choice for Felicia Montealegre. I think a Costa Rican woman is who was supposed to be, but weird casting choice. But I mean, she's fantastic. She did great, but kind of like weird decision to cast her for that role. Because when you look at Carey Mulligan, you'd never look at her face and be like, that's a Felicia Montealegre. And Bradley Cooper's caked in prosthetics in this, whereas Carey Mulligan's Carey Mulligan. Like, she just shows up as Carey Mulligan. So yeah, whatever. It's just a whatever movie.
George?
Yeah, kind of the same thoughts. Not really a movie I've thought about since I watched at the film festival. Kind of annoyed how like the musical aspect of Leonard Bernstein's life kind of took a backseat to like his romance with Carey Mulligan's character. I thought this movie had just like a massive identity crisis because it just kind of didn't know what it wanted to be, whether it wanted to be this romance, you know, this next fantastic romance, or this, you know, Tar-esque, you know, dissection of a battered musical genius. So I don't know. It just left me with a lot of questions. I don't feel like I learned a lot about Leonard Bernstein's life, which I think when you're talking about a biopic is just like the most offensive thing ever. I definitely got bits and pieces, but I don't know, nothing to like kind of leave a lasting impression. You guys kind of nailed it with Carey Mulligan. I think she's the absolute star here. I kind of go back and forth on my number one acting performance of the year on the female side between Emma Stone, Sandra Hüller, and Carey Mulligan. They're kind of my top three, and honestly, the order can change any day, anytime I look at my ranking. Bradley Cooper, I think, was good. I think there were moments where he could just be a little too over performative, a little too, I really want that Oscar kind of performance, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. I think he's great. He is in my top 5, so I wouldn't mind an Oscar nomination for him. That's on the acting and the directing side. And then on the directing side, I think that's where he absolutely shines. I think some sequences are just beautiful. His use of black and white is awesome. That one musical number was really cool. So yeah, it was a very all over the place experience for me, where there were aspects of this movie that I really enjoyed, and then there were aspects that I think they could have just done better, or they could have just focused on, one thing more than they do the other. And I'm not saying that as a romance movie this doesn't work. I'm just saying as a biopic, I don't think this necessarily works, because I would have just liked to be a little more in the know of Leonard Bernstein's career as opposed to, everything around his romance with Felicia. I think I ended at a 3.5 out of 5. I want to rewatch it. Like I said last week, I believe there's a lot of new releases this year that I want to rewatch and just kind of reevaluate where my rating stands, and Maestro is definitely one of them. Should have done it this week, honestly, but I was just too busy watching other things. So I ended up at 3.5 out of 5, with a lot of Oscar potential coming out of this movie, I think.
Yep. All right, Seth, final take.
Yeah. Most things have already been said. I think as a biopic, it's pretty box standard in terms of Leonard Bernstein's life. We don't really get much. I also seen a lot of takes online. I mean, I don't know much about him as a person, what he was like in general, but wouldn't probably surprise people to know apparently this is very tame on his sexuality as well, which is inevitable when it comes to
it never goes into the fact that he's clearly bisexual, but it just implies,
it just hinges at it, and it just and I think it's honestly, it's quite offensive as someone's character as well. I really think, I think if that's a massive part of his life, it always happens in these sort of films as well. It always happens. I can't remember what biopic was a few years ago, same thing, but whatever. I think it tries to be.
Is my guess of what you're thinking.
That's the one. That's the one. Exactly that. And that's why I kind of didn't like that film. That was a major issue I had with it. I think, like you said, Bradley Cooper's ability as a director is kind of undeniable. I think some of the shots are really good. The color utilization was amazing. I think he knows how to compose an image. There were some shots in this which were really, really nice. I think the first hour kind of tries hard to be too kind of sincere and too earnest and too it has a lot to say, but really doesn't. And I think that's where the Oscar baity comments, which I'm not going to say, but that's where they've kind of come in on Twitter, which I understand. I think it was quite mindless at points. He just kind of went on and on and on without really going into anything I was particularly interested in myself about his life or his musical career. But there were some good moments. I did like the second half a lot more. Carey Mulligan is actually, I think, my number one pick for my favorite female performance this year. I think she might be in my top 3 performances in general. I need to recheck that, but around that kind of level, I think she was seriously the shining star in this, and by far the best thing about the film. But it is just a script that kind of comes across as too earnest, not really much going on, tedious at points, definitely boring at certain points as well. And not really I expected more. I kind of just expected this because I think a lot of these films are 10 a penny. You kind of know what you're going to get. But I think it was very tame on him, very tame on his life, very tame on his sexuality as well, like I mentioned, and just a bit mindless. But overall, it was I'd probably say a little bit above average. Carey Mulligan and Bradley Cooper's ability as a director really pushing it forward, but nothing to write home about. Just very, very this is the perfect 3-star to me, where it was it was fine, but I'll never think about it again. That's kind of where I end up with this film.
Yeah, I don't think we have spoilers to get into. I don't know if you guys want to add anything, but
just two minor things that are circling film Twitter, which are funny. The two things and that's the thing, this movie was received so lukewarmly that the two things circling around everywhere is, one, the Snoopy shot, hilarious.
That was
why
funny.
And I just don't get that. It just took me so out of the movie when I first saw it. I'm what are we doing here? Did it have to be the apartment right there on that day at that time of the day? Just so funny. And then the other thing being the Adam Sandler voice, where he's I slept with your mother and your father.
Billy Madison voice.
The Billy Madison voice.
And it's just that's just perfectly encapsulates how this movie's been received by people in the critics and film Twitter sphere, where it's those are the two takeaways: the Macy's Day Parade scene and the Billy Madison voice.
I think people in Hollywood, from what I've seen, I think people in Hollywood are liking this movie, and I gotta assume it'll be. I think it's going to get nominated for everything that Bradley Cooper wants: Best Picture, Best Director, and Best Actor. But I don't think it'll win any of those. That's my take. That's my guess. But 55 out of 100 for myself. I was teetering with a 2.5, but I think it had more good than bad to drop it down to just like a half movie. A 3 out of 5 for both Seth and Tyler, and then a 3.5 out of 5 from George. So kind of a all around just span right there. But a very okay movie, a fine movie.